Hello, everyone. How are you today? I'm Dr. Garrett Smith, the nutrition detective around these here YouTube parts. And boy, today, do we have a topic. Let me just go over a couple things first. If you want to find more from me, there's always this channel. All of my social media links and other things are below. The Love Your Liver program can be found at members.nutritiondetective.com. That's what I'm known for, other than when I'm working directly with clients. And then you can find the Madness of Modern Nutrition, my free course, at madnessofmodernnutrition.com. So, one other housekeeping thing. There are people in the network, I'm just saying this for everybody, but there are people in the Love Your Liver network, it's the Nutrition Detective network now, we've changed it, who are trying to find the inner circle, which is my private video Q&A chat, kind of like I do here, except people who are members in there, it's paid. You get unlimited questions, and I can answer them much more openly than I can in a forum such as this one. Anyway, when you're in the network, to find the current inner circle link, if you want to join, it's in the featured area so go in the home space. So if you look on the menu, find the home area, go in the home space, and then look under the featured articles, and you'll find the one that talks about the inner circle and the advanced detox. And those are the links to go join, because we had to change it. So if you're finding links around the network, they may be dead. I'm sorry, I don't have time to go fix the dead links. I got too many things to do to change the disastrous paradigm of modern medicine to go back and fix dead links. So maybe I'll find somebody who can do it for me, but that's how you find the active inner circle link. So for all of you who are here today, boy, do we have a topic today. I asked yesterday inside the Nutrition Detective Network, inside the Love Your Liver program, for people to help me with links, just because I love crowdsourcing is one of the greatest things about the internet. And I just said, hey, everybody, I'm going to be doing stuff on toxic bile and copper toxicity and vitamin A toxicity tomorrow. So if you go in and you find some interesting links, post them here. And so this is how social media is supposed to work, right? People, yeah, Will, I saw your 20 links. So Will and David Hagerston kind of really took the lead on posting stuff there, and it was super helpful. I mean, I've had these links before. I've seen a lot of them before, and I didn't collate them before, put them all together. And so it helped that other people were able to go find them. And I think they found some new things that I hadn't before. So this is what inside the Nutrition Detective Network, this is like teamwork. This is true teamwork. It's what social media should be, instead of people just bickering and trolling and shilling and all these things that happen on all the major, and censorship that happen on all the major social media places. So we have 1,700, probably 1,800 plus members now who are working towards a similar goal, the same goal, which is to be healthy. And we're looking into the research to find out places where they were wrong, or they were purposely wrong to mislead us. I like to tell you that things like drinking fluoride in your water is good for your teeth. On that quick pass by, here's a funny thing. I don't know if you ever heard this, but I remember reading articles about soda, and they were talking about how much sugar was in soda and high fructose corn syrup and how bad it was for your teeth. But the logic they used as to why it wasn't so bad, it wasn't terrible for your teeth in terms of the amount of sugar, was because of how quickly it passed by your teeth, right? It didn't sit there and marinate your teeth. I don't know, maybe Peters like to gargle with soda and swish their teeth with Mexican Coke. I mean, they do all sorts of strange things. But carrot salads and eating liver and methylene blue and all sorts of interesting things, overdosing themselves on thyroid medication, whatever. Anyway, I lost my train of thought with that one. Oh, so it was that it went by your teeth very quickly, right? That was their logic. It didn't have much time to hurt your teeth because you drank it so quickly. But yet, when they put fluoride in your water, it helps your teeth. It's not that it passes by quickly. Soda passes by quickly, but the fluoride in water sits there long enough to help your teeth. And it definitely doesn't do anything systemic to you. Nah, couldn't. Absolutely couldn't. I wonder if I could go search for fluoride and infertility and find anything on that. Because, when they start dosing the entire population, and just so you know, not all the water supplies in the US have fluoride. Arizona doesn't do it, or at least Tucson doesn't do it. I remember my dad telling me that when I was very young, and I was early on in my health nut years, and I was like, the fluoride in the water. And then my dad goes, he's a dentist in town. He goes, they don't do that here. And I went, really? I thought they did it everywhere. And he just said, no, they don't do it here. So, but so they try to justify, right? They try to justify giving you fluoride as being good for your teeth while they're dosing it systemically. And they also try to explain how soda isn't bad for your teeth because the sugar goes by your teeth so quickly. So they're just trying to encourage you to take poisons because it's good in one way and it's not so bad in another way, right? So let's jump in. So what we're going over today, toxic bile. We're going to go over a Rockefeller study, 1906 study, where they talk about what happened to animals when they injected bile into them. And we're going to go over how bad bile is for depression in your blood. We're going to go over how bile affects your brain. We're going to go over ancient Greek theories of bile and how it affected depression, melancholia. We're going to go over copper toxicity and how constantly they find in depressive states low zinc and high copper. And the connections between vitamin A and depression, which have been shown over and over. The worst case scenario is Accutane, which is exactly like the natural form of 13-cis retinoic acid your body makes, and how connected that is to suicide and depression and hysteria, schizophrenia, all sorts of things like that. These things are bad. So before we get into this, I'm just going to give a quick overview of toxic bile theory. If you want the best explanation of toxic bile theory I've done, go to Livestream 71. That's where I kind of cover the whole thing. I don't have time to cover it today because we got tons to get through. So go if you want to understand how toxic bile is leaking. If you have chronic health issues, any chronic health issues, I'm just tired. I don't have as much energy as I want. That's chronic health issues, okay? I go over how toxic bile leaks into your blood. Toxic bile contains all sorts of nastiness, including vitamin A and copper. And taking vitamin A and copper can cause cholestasis or liver injury, which then causes toxic bile to leak into your blood. Toxic bile contains all sorts of nastiness, toxic metals, fat-soluble toxins like forever chemicals, PFASs and is there OSs, I think, too, and all these things. And then it contains copper and vitamin A, which is how excess vitamin A gets into your blood in the first place, and copper too. So this is all connected, okay? Pierre, I don't know if there's a connection problem. Let me... Oh. Holy crap, hold on. Did I just lose my connection? No, it looks all right. Okay, sorry, I just wanted to check. Couldn't see the little coming and going arrows on my modem for a second, but they're there. Okay, so we got it. We're good. So let's get into it. There's been a lot of space weather lately. If for those of you who pay attention to space weather, there has been a lot of space weather lately. Tons of geomagnetic storms, several big solar flares. Like this affects electronics. We know this, right? This is one of the things I help fix in people is electromagnetic sensitivity. If you don't believe that space weather could affect people, if you would actually believe that space weather can affect electronics, which it does, this is known. And we are kind of a biochemical electric sack of meat that just does, they talk about electrolytes, right? Copper is extremely conductive. Iron is extremely magnetic. Gosh, if you have problems with electromagnetics, you're probably copper toxic and iron overloaded. And that's why you're too electric and magnetic when you get into an electromagnetic field. And that's why maybe when you were a kid, you didn't have electromagnetic problems, and now as an adult, you do. because you got toxic over time, probably like most of us, following terrible health advice to get more vitamin A and more copper and all this garbage that they're trying to push on you to make you sick and infertile and die early. That's what they want. Some people out there are just following along with it, and they don't realize that they're hurting people. They have good intentions, but they just haven't figured it out yet. Most of them live in constant denial of wondering why their initial improvements of doing these toxic things are now gone. It's sad. So anyway, let's get into it. So I had to cut out some. I'm going to put the links to these papers in the chat. So here we're going to start out first. I'm just going to be reading a lot of quotes today. I mean, I'm going to be giving my analysis on them. But first, we're going to go into citing Hippocrates on depression in epilepsy. Depression in epilepsy. Gosh, it's almost like they're connected. And if you haven't seen it, in the testimonial section of my YouTube, we have a testimonial from a mother talking about how her son has now been seizure-free for, I mean, when we did that video, it was a year and a month, I believe. And I have not heard back from her about her son having any issues, and we got him on a low vitamin A diet. I go over low vitamin A research on that testimonial, I believe, or I've been over it before in another live stream. If you have seizures, the likelihood of you having vitamin A toxicity is astronomical, and you should look for help with that. I might know somebody who could help you with that, but let's go on to this. Melancholia. This is the quote from the abstract. Melancholia, i.e., the black bile disease. Bile causes disease? Anyway, the black bile disease is defined as a persistent mental state of fear and sadness, which appears more consistent with a dysthymic disorder or depressive personality disorder than an acute or episodic depressive disorder. Confusingly, the term melancholia also signifies a humoral etiology, or how it was caused, namely a surplus too much of black bile, which causes several distinct diseases, including epilepsy. The quote addressing the conversion of melancholia into epilepsy and vice versa. So they're saying epilepsy can turn into depression and depression can turn into epilepsy, and vice versa, was taken from the writing Epidemics. The famous treatise on epilepsy, De Morbo Sacro, does not mention melancholia, but instead attributes epilepsy to two other humors, phlegm and yellow bile. This writing proposes an etiological or a cause-related relationship between inherited personality and epilepsy, wherein a phlegmatic temperament represents an epilepsy risk, while a bilious, choleric temperament offers protection against epilepsy. So basically, what we're getting at here is, since the time of Hippocrates, they've been linking states of your toxic bile to disease. Now, what would make bile black? What potentially could make bile black? Well, you ever seen an iron pan? What color is an iron pan? It's pretty black, isn't it? That's an element that we try to get rid of in the bile. Yellow bile. Bile is normally yellow, but what also that we are talking about today is yellow. Vitamin A is yellow. Many of the bitter things you take in are yellow. If you think of like when chocolate or coffee stain something white, what color is the stain? It's yellow. It's not always so much brown, but it's yellowish brown. Bitter things are generally yellow. Berberine. Don't do it. Anyway, so that's from the time of Hippocrates. Now we come up to this paper. And so, wait, let me back up. You should not normally have any bile in your blood. You should not normally have any bile in your blood. Bile is meant to go from your liver to your bile ducts to your intestines to go out in your poop. 5% a day-ish goes out in your poop. And then the other 95% is supposed to be absorbed by the closed system, the portal venous system. It goes right back to the liver, where the liver filters it out again and then puts it into bile again. Okay, so it's supposed to stay in a closed loop. It is not supposed to go out into your main circulation. So if you have bile in your blood, which is what we talk about toxic bile theory, you are suffering in some way from that bile in your blood. Okay. So now we're going to get into the 1906 paper from the Rockefeller Institute. It was nice of them to do this study. It's too bad they never really did follow-ups past 1905 and 1906. But let's just go find out what happens when they injected animals with bile. Okay? When we talk about bile as toxic, and you read the other people on the internet who are like, bile is good and you want to make your bile so wonderful and have all these wonderful qualities and make it thin and da-da-da. No. You want to get rid of the bile. The bile will do stuff on its way out. Nobody has to help the bile do its stuff. You need to make the bile less toxic and make it leave. This is what you want. The bile is your liver's poop. If you think of it that way, right? You want to eat and you turn it into poop and you want to get rid of the poop. Bile, you want to make bile and you want it to go where it's supposed to go, into your intestines, and you want to poop it out. If everything's going like that, I'm not anti-bile. I help people make bile more than anybody else. But I want that bile to stay where it's supposed to go and leave. Now, for those of you out there who are going to make a mistake because you're new here and you don't understand that your chronic problems are caused by bile, and you think, Dr. Smith just said I want to make a bunch of bile, and you go and you read the research and you make big mistakes on things you think are going to make more bile, and you start feeling worse, don't come and blame me, because I'm saying you need to learn a lot more. You need to hang around here, go in the Love Your Liver program. You need to learn, because the bile is the cause of your problems. And helping your body to get rid of that bile, not too quickly, is the solution to your problems. Just like if you drive a car too fast, you're going to crash. You try to push your detox too fast and you don't know what you're doing, you're going to crash. This is not a game. I am constantly telling people to slow things down. Take your foot off the gasoline. Take your foot off the gas pedal. Don't crash. Don't make yourself crash. Everybody has to figure out where that top speed is, where they can find it. And most people push too hard. Everybody's got to find their limit, right? Kids have to touch the hot stove to figure out it's hot. They don't believe you when you tell them. I'm constantly telling people to slow down. So anyway, on to the Rockefeller paper. Here's the paper, Studies on the Toxicity of Bile, Part 2. The toxic effects of bile upon the central nervous system and the elimination of strychnine through the bile in nephrectomized animals. So that's, I believe nephrectomized means they took out their kidneys. They got rid of their kidneys. Gosh, they were getting rid of strychnine through the bile. Your bile is how your body gets rid of toxic things. The biggest mistake I have, people in like the alternative world, and even like MDs and naturopathic doctors, and they think that and even, I mean, gosh, the gurus on the internet, when they say the liver detoxes something, that doesn't mean it just, people like act like it just poof disappears. It doesn't. It doesn't just poof. A sewage treatment plant does not make all the toxic crap that's going through it poof disappear. It concentrates it and it's going to dispose of it somewhere. Your body disposes of that toxicity into the bile. That bile leaking into your blood is what causes your health problems, because it's so toxic. It's not supposed to be there. And as we fix this problem, the problems go away. So what happened to these animals? The present status of the views entertained concerning the toxicity of bile may be described as follows. All agree that bile is a very toxic substance. It hemolyzes red blood corpuscles. What they're saying there is it destroys red blood cells. Have you ever had chronic anemia? Chronic destruction of red blood cells? Anyway, and dissolves white blood corpuscles and other tissue cells. It dissolves white blood cells. How many of you out there with chronic health conditions have low white blood cells? What causes that? Well, they just said here, bile can dissolve your white blood cells and other tissue cells. Let's back up 1 second and remember what vitamin A turns into in the body. Remember, the body gets rid of vitamin A through the bile. If the bile leaks into your blood, you now have toxic bile with vitamin A and copper in it in your blood. Retinoic acid, all trans retinoic acid, also known as Retin-A, people use it on their face as a chemical peel. What does it do on their face? It dissolves the skin cells. Are you seeing the connection here? So they're saying bile dissolves tissue cells. Gosh, retinoic acid dissolves tissue cells. What a coincidence. Let's keep going. It retards and stops the heartbeat. So it slows down and stops the heartbeat. Lowers the blood pressure. For those of you out there with chronically low blood pressure, you may be interested in this, but it can also raise blood pressure. It can do both. And is capable of affecting the structure of nerve and muscle, etc. Regarding the effect upon the central nervous system, there is unanimity of opinion. Everyone agrees that bile produces depression. Let me read that again. Regarding the effect upon the central nervous system, there is unanimity of opinion that bile produces depression. Most of the investigators describe stupor and weakness of the animals as the predominant symptoms following the intravenous injection of bile salts in mammals, and coma and paralysis following their injection into the lymph sacs of frogs. Pretty nasty stuff, right? This is why when I tell people, if you go and you try to force your bile to make more, but you're leaking too much of it into your blood, you're gonna have a bad time. This is not a game, okay? Think of it as like you have this toxic waste in your liver and you have to get rid of it. Gosh, without causing, like, I don't know, trains derailing and spilling giant puddles of toxic stuff, right? If the toxic stuff would have stayed on the train, there wouldn't be a problem. But the toxic stuff went somewhere where it wasn't supposed to. Do you see the analogy here? Okay, let's keep going. That, contrary to the prevailing opinion, bile contains a tetanic element. That's like muscle tetany, like super tightening, or an agent which causes increase of excitability of the nervous system. Bile contains a tetanic element or an agent which causes increase of excitability of the nervous system. Let me just tell you, that could be the bile itself, but also copper is known for overexciting the nervous system. It's very conductive. It causes lots of tingling and neuropathies. It makes your brain run too fast in a bad way, like anxiety. Continuing, that bile from the common duct of many rabbits causes marked hyperesthesia, excessive physical sensitivity, especially of the skin. Gosh, there's no children being born today with like excessive sensitivity problems, are there? And tetanic attacks relating to or the characteristic of tetanus, especially in connection with tonic muscle spasms. So when injected into frogs. That stagnant bile, we never talk about stagnant bile, do we? Oh, yes, we do. That's called cholestasis. That stagnant bile, as in the gallbladder, etc., invariably, that means it's going to, produces coma and paralysis. Stagnant bile in the gallbladder causes coma and paralysis. Maybe some of you ladies especially, but also you guys may have gone to the doctor and they look at your gallbladder and they say your gallbladder's not moving. It's not squeezing. It's not doing what it's supposed to do to squeeze out the bile. They just told you that injecting bile could cause coma and paralysis in frogs. Do you think the very thing in your body that's made to hold bile could eventually get that effect? Wouldn't that happen before your whole body had the effect, right? It would happen where you store the bile. It's still, your gallbladder's made to hold bile, but it can still break down. That's how toxic bile is. Okay. Continuing, that the depressive and exciting elements of the bile are mutual antagonists. They just said that there's both depressive and exciting. So there's things that, push things down and there's things that push it up at the same time. You out there may be having more of one than the other. Part of this is both the toxicity of your bile, and part of it may be your genetics. We can see both. This is what I'm saying. When we can see like anemia and excess red blood cells, we can see both of them from similar toxicities. Different people have different results. And this is one of the problems in this is everybody wants everybody to be the same, to have the same response. It's not how it works. Sorry. It's just not. More people have one reaction than another, but that doesn't mean that the other people who have a different reaction should be like thrown out. Okay. That the depressive and exciting elements of the bile are mutual antagonists, the total effect of both when simultaneously present being that of an algebraic sum. So they're saying you're gonna add up the depressive effects, you're gonna add up the stimulating effects, and they're gonna give you a balance. You may be overstimulated or you may be overly depressed, and that just means things slowing down. That the depressive element, when present in a highly effective dose, is by far the stronger of the two, while on the other hand, the tetanic element becomes effective apparently in a dose far below that which constitutes the minimum for the depressive element. Basically, they're saying that the depressive element is stronger. Gosh, look around our world today. I know we may not specifically be talking about depression, but depressive. One of the ways I term depression is a lack of energy production by your brain. They're saying the depressive part is very strong. Gosh, look around society today. It's almost like there's a depression problem and everybody's depressed or depressive. Okay. Let me just finish this up. That owing to these particular characteristics of the two antagonistic toxic elements, the mixture of both within the bile can be so adjusted as to produce any of the many possible degrees of irritability, lying within the range of tetanus at one end and paralysis at the other, and including a neutral state presenting an apparently a normal or tranquil condition. This is, okay, there's two things that we taught. There's the big thing about the bile in how it causes a certain disease and how people can, people could take medications or supplements or do other things that can change the recipe of the bile. They just said that the recipe of the bile, you can change it. They can adjust the recipe of the bile, just like you could adjust a recipe in your kitchen. The mixture of both within the bile can be so adjusted as to produce any of the many possible degrees of irritability, lying within the range of tetanus at one end, so super tight, like won't relax at one end, and paralysis at the other, and including a neutral state presenting an apparently a normal or tranquil condition. There can be an excess of bile in your blood. That could be a problem. You can have the bad recipe of the bile in your blood, which can apparently cause any condition along either way. And we're going to get into that. This is why everyone's so confused about fixing their health, is because no one else out there is talking about the bile and how it is ruling everything about your chronic health condition. And yes, you can do things to change it and you might feel better. It may not be a good thing you did to change it in overall, but you could feel better for a while until the problem rears its ugly head again. This is one thing that this is why it's not a game. People out there on PubMed or Dr. Google, as you all know, you can cause yourself a lot of problems from Dr. Google. So let's go into the next one. Liver's influence on the brain through the action of bile acids. Okay. That's the did I put that other paper in there? I think I did. Pretty sure I did. I'll just put it again because I want you to see the Rockefeller Institute has known about the toxicity of bile for 120 years-ish. Okay? This is not new. But why has nobody been talking about it until Anthony Mawson started really getting into it? So, remember, this is from the liver's influence on the brain through the action of bile acids. Well, are you supposed to have bile in your blood? No. Do we just go over how the bile is toxic to the brain and the nervous system and everything else? Yes. So, here we go. The liver partakes as a sensor and effector of peripheral metabolic changes and a regulator of systemic blood and nutrient circulation. Don't mind that sentence too much. Let's go. As such, abnormalities arising from liver dysfunction can influence the brain in multiple ways, owing to direct and indirect bilateral communication between the liver and brain. Interestingly, altered bile acid composition, what they just said was changing the bile recipe. Interestingly, altered bile acid composition resulting from perturbed liver cholesterol metabolism influences systemic inflammatory responses, blood-brain barrier permeability, and neuron synaptic functions. Furthermore, bile acids produced by specific bacterial species may provide a causal link between dysregulated gut flora, your microbiome, and neurodegenerative disease pathology through the gut-brain axis. The bile let me translate this. Altered bile acid composition, like I said, a changed bile acid recipe in the blood influences systemic inflammatory responses. My doctor says I have too much inflammation. And then we should go, okay, what's causing the inflammation? Oh, you mean bile has been shown to influence your systemic inflammatory responses. Bile is toxic. Bile contains vitamin A, which is chemical peel, which dissolves your tissues. Boy, would that be inflammation? Yeah. Copper is extremely inflammatory. Blood-brain barrier permeability. Let's talk leaky gut, and let's talk altered blood-brain barrier permeability. Leaky brain. Gosh. Bile dissolves tissues. Gosh, bile in your blood could make your brain leaky. Bile in your gut makes your gut leaky. I've been over this research before. And neuron synaptic function. So how well the nerves conduct their signals. What they talk about bile acids produced by specific bacterial species is secondary bile acids. Secondary bile acids are the most toxic and will cause liver injury all by themselves. They can inject lithocholic acid in rats, and within an hour, they've caused massive cholestasis, massive leaky bile. Bile's going straight back into the blood. Lithocholic acid is a secondary bile acid made by your gut bacteria. Okay? Now, so let's start connecting these things. Let's go into the gut microbiome a little bit. Here's the paper. Gut microbiome linked metabolites in the pathobiology of major depression, with or without anxiety, a role for bile acids. That one, there we go. Results. You gotta follow me here. The concentration of the primary bile acid, chenodeoxycholic acid, was significantly lower at baseline in both severely depressed and highly anxious participants compared to participants with less severe symptoms. So I want you to, people might be going, but wait, it's less. This is a primary bile acid. These are not the most toxic ones. So if there's less of the primary bile acid in the people who are more depressed and more anxious, where did it go? What was it turned into? Oh, let's find out. The gut bacteria derived secondary bile acids produced from chenodeoxycholic acid, such as lithocholic acid and several of its metabolites, and their ratios to primary bile acids were significantly higher in the more anxious participants. It turned into the primary bile acids that were less turned into the secondary bile acids. Okay. Let's see. Significant differences in baseline chenodeoxycholic acid, isolithocholic acid, and several bile acid ratios, the recipe, differentiated the treatment failures from remitters. So they're saying the drugs worked differently on people with different bile acid recipes and different amounts of bile in their blood. Is it that antidepressants and other things like this, anti-anxiety meds, actually affect your bile production and the bile recipe? Yeah. So now let's just go into, hey, is there something that might be out there that has been shown to, let's say, positively affect major depression and diarrhea at the same time, which is diarrhea is mostly caused by an excess of bile in your guts, and probably excessively toxic bile, where your guts get in touch with this toxic bile, a lot of it, and it's too toxic, and then your guts say, get this the heck out of here, I don't want this, and it gives you diarrhea. Okay, so just to show you that your gut microbiome plays a role in your secondary bile acid production, let's just go into this. Bacillus coagulans, MTCC5856, also known as LactoSpore, for the management of major depression with irritable bowel syndrome, a randomized, double-blind, placebo-controlled, multi-center, pilot clinical study. They have enough words in there for you? All the magic words, right? Let me read that again just for all the people who need that. Hold on. I'm going to put the Amazon link to this should any of you want to buy it. The Amazon link is in the chat. It is called LactoSpore. Do not buy just Bacillus coagulans. If you decide to go out and try this, if you decide to try a probiotic, try it slowly. And by that, I mean less than a full pill, like significantly less than a full pill. Probiotics are, when you push the right button with probiotics, they're very strong. When you push the wrong button with probiotics, you're going to be in for a bad time. Do we get to know which one you are? No, that's why you start slow. You are the experiment. You don't get to just look at a study and be like, well, the study said this is how so many of us made mistakes. We looked at studies and we're like, oh, this says it's good for this. I'm going to take this. And then people go, I feel like crap on this. But the study said it's good, so they keep taking it and keep hurting themselves. Don't do that. If a practitioner puts you on something that makes you feel bad, stop taking it. I will tell you, probiotics, if you have some good stuff with a probiotic and a couple little bad symptoms, sometimes the one thing that we can do with probiotics is we take it a little longer, as long as when you take a probiotic, if you get some weird stuff in your guts or whatever at the start, probiotics are one of those things where we're changing the gut biome. So it can take a little while for your gut to adjust. So what you want to see with a probiotic, if you have negatives at the start, you want to see the negatives decreasing over a week or two and the positives increasing. If you see the opposite, or you see the negatives start going up and they stay steady and you don't really get any positives, stop taking the probiotic. If you get to 2 weeks and you have not felt any benefit from a probiotic, stop wasting your time and your money on it. Okay, don't just take probiotics because somebody said to. Probiotics should have an effect on you. If they have a bad effect that is either getting worse or starts and kind of stays steady, don't take it. But if you get some negative symptoms at the start, like let's say you get a little more bloating, you get a little farty, whatever, but you're okay with it, and over 2 weeks, those symptoms fade away and you notice benefits that are increasing as you go, that's okay. That's good. Most supplements, if you take them and you immediately feel bad, just stop them. But probiotics are one that I give a little time to, because you're changing, like the garden analogy that I do on the gut. You're changing the garden. You're changing what's grown in the garden. It's going to be a little challenging, So even adding beans or oats, the soluble fiber feeds the gut bacteria and it can cause you to not feel good. If you continually don't feel good on soluble fiber, then do less or do a different type. This is the solution to when you don't feel good. Do less or do a different type. Yeah, Hope just said LactoSpore kicked her butt. I needed very little to get results, like 1/7 of a pill. So yes, go slow. You do not have to take a full pill of anything, people. Just because they made it in a pill doesn't mean you have to take it that way. This is why we sell the fractionated teaspoons on the website, where you can do 1/64th of a teaspoon, which is a drop. I deal with, if you're out there and you are sensitive, you are the sensitive type of person, we have the place for you. Because we're not after you taking full doses of anything. We're after you taking the right dose for you. Okay? Anyway, LactoSpore. Back to LactoSpore. Some people it really helps, but I'm just showing you here what it can do. Bacillus coagulans MTCC 5856 showed robust, that's a big word in a study, robust efficacy for the treatment of patients experiencing IBS symptoms with major depressive disorder. The improvement in depression and IBS symptoms, they're talking about diarrhea, was statistically significant and clinically meaningful. Wow. All they did was they put a bacteria in there, and it affected their major depressive symptoms and their irritable bowel with diarrhea. What did it probably affect? Well, one of the things we know about LactoSpore, Bacillus coagulans, MTCC 5856, and it must say those letters and numbers. It has lots of what's called bile salt hydrolase in it. Now, conventional wisdom on bile salt hydrolase is that more is worse. Do we go with the mainstream stuff here? No, we get different results because we do different things. And we test these things. And that is one thing we know about LactoSpore is it has lots of bile salt hydrolase, which chops off the taurines and the glycines and the sulfates from bile acids, which changes the recipe of the bile. That is what changes the recipe of the bile. You can do that as one thing. So that's the toxic bile theory connection to depression. And now, before I get into this next stuff, I'm going to get into vitamin A. Well, I'm just going to say vitamin A toxicity and copper toxicity and zinc deficiency, which we'll cover a little bit too, exacerbate or worsen depression. There are people out there, I don't even know how these people live with themselves, who say that copper toxicity doesn't exist. There was a guy on Twitter who told me that vitamin A toxicity doesn't exist. There's only vitamin A deficiency. And somebody else said that there's other people out there saying this about copper. I feel very badly for these people. This has been known a very long time that these things are toxic. Bioavailable copper is nonsense. So let's get into it. So first, from the paper, vitamin neurotoxicity. Gosh, vitamins are neurotoxic? Who funded the early research on vitamins? Was it the Rockefellers and Merck? Yes, it was. So much so that the American Chemical Society recently had an award ceremony for Merck because of all their discoveries in the vitamins. And you may be out there taking your prenatals and taking your multivitamins, giving your children multivitamins that contain vitamin A and copper and manganese and vitamin D, rat poison. And you're wondering why they're getting more allergic and sick and why all the kids today are so sick. And there's a reason. So let's get into vitamin neurotoxicity. Okay, let me put this link in there. Oh, here, let me get the whole study. Here, this is a Sci-Hub link. I'm going to put the Sci-Hub link in there so you can see the whole PDF. This is somebody say charcoal can bind them up. I have 15 or 16 articles on charcoal in the Love Your Liver program. If you want to know how to use it, that's what it's there for. If you get bound up from charcoal, you either took too much or you're not ready for it yet because you're not pooping well enough because your bile is not going into your intestines yet as well as it should. Constipation means your bile is going somewhere else. It's going into your bloodstream, not into your bowels. And that's why you don't poop. And that's why it's associated with hypothyroid. And hypothyroid is associated with, I don't know, things like anxiety and depression, brain fog, not pooping, low body temperature. It's all connected. So anyway, did I put that Sci-Hub link in there? I think I did. Yep, there we go. Let me put in the PubMed abstract. If you are constipated and you try to take charcoal, you're going to bind yourself up worse. Constipated to me is you need to poop once a day minimum. I know modern medicine will be like, it's okay if you only poop like once every 3 days, then you're okay. And anything less than that is constipation. That is a joke. That's a joke. That's really a joke. So, vitamin neurotoxicity. Here we go. Vitamin A toxicity is also a good general model of vitamin neurotoxicity because it shows the importance of the ratio of vitamin and vitamin binding proteins. Vitamin binding proteins are there to protect you from these toxins in producing vitamin toxicity and of CNS permeability barriers. Because vitamin A and analogs, all the different forms of vitamin A, enter the CNS better than most vitamins. And because retinoids, which is vitamin A, have many effects on enzyme activity and gene expression, here we go. Vitamin A neurotoxicity is more likely than that of most, perhaps all other vitamins. Megadose vitamin therapy may cause injury that is confused with disease symptoms, including you liver eaters, and you carrot salad eaters, and you kale eaters, and you spinach eaters, you juicers. High vitamin intake is more hazardous to peripheral organs than to the nervous system because CNS vitamin entry is restricted. But remember, they just said vitamin A gets into the CNS better than all the other vitamins. Here's another quote from it. Just because, like, people love to say that some of the gurus out on the internet, they're like, the liver doesn't store things. The liver doesn't store toxins. No, it doesn't. Okay, here we go. From actual research scientists, excess vitamin A is converted to retinol esters again and stored in the liver. Hence the potential of animal liver to produce hypervitaminosis A. Does this not make sense? We store vitamin A in the liver, not because we want to hold on to it as like a little, for a rainy day. No, it's because your body cannot get rid of it fast enough. And if it doesn't get it out of the bloodstream, it's going to kill you because it's going to leak into your blood with the bile, and it's going to affect your nervous system and your heart. Okay. Another quote. Retinoic acid is formed in the body from retinol and shares some of its biological actions. In certain systems, retinol and retinoic acid are similar in biological potency. What? They just said retinol and retinoic acid. So you people are like, well, but retinoic acid, we need that. That's active vitamin A. And here they are saying that they can have the same potency, which means the same toxicity. So for those out there on certain protocols being like, you need retinol. Okay. You're taking something that is the same potency, toxicity as retinoic acid, and your body turns retinol into 13-cis-retinoic acid, which is sold in pills as Accutane. It turns it into all-trans-retinoic acid, which is Retin-A, tretinoin, and it turns it into 9-cis-retinoic acid, which is known as alitretinoin, which is used as a chemotherapy. And retinol is said here to be the same potency as the retinoic acids. Oops. Let's keep going. So isotretinoin is 13-cis-retinoic acid, is Accutane. Your body makes, let me just find this. Let me find endogenous. There it is. I'm just going to put this link here just for anybody, any of the doubting Denises. The paper is called 13-cis-retinoic acid is an endogenous compound in human serum. What they're saying is the same chemical as Accutane is made within the body in human blood. You turn vitamin A into the exact same compound as Accutane in your body. Here's another paper. Come on, go to it. There's a weird thing with some of the determination of endogenous levels of 13-cis-retinoic acid, isotretinoin, all trans-retinoic acid, tretinoin, and their 4 oxometabolites in human and animal plasma by high-performance liquid chromatography with automated column switching and ultraviolet detection. Determination of endogenous levels. How they even said it here that it's the same compound as the drug. Endogenous means made within the body. Made within the body, not taken by a pill. Okay? Anybody who says these things are different is wrong. They're either misinformed, they're disinforming you, or they're lying. You make these things in your body. So back to iso. So whenever we talk about Accutane, we can look at Accutane effects to see what happens in the human body from excess vitamin A. Many of you know this already. Accutane, folks, I'm really sorry that you took that. If your parents gave it to you or whatever, your doctor lied to you about how okay it was for you. But Accutane is one of the hardest things to fix. That damage is really damaging. Accutane takes some of the longest to fix. I'm sorry. That is how it is. You took a pharmaceutical version of the most toxic form of vitamin A. Oh, wait, I can't put that. Geez, the paper is too long. Hold on. Let me see. I love how. Oh, my goodness. Here, I'll just put part of the title of it so you guys can search it and find it. Can't put the link's too long. So let's go into it now. Let me see. Do I have anything else here? Oh, wait, sorry. I didn't finish the vitamin neurotoxicity part. This is why I went over the isotretinoin. Here we go. A constellation, a group of characteristic defects in infants exposed to isotretinoin, 13-cis-retinoic acid, in early pregnancy includes craniofacial, like cleft lip, cleft palate, CNS, central nervous system, cardiovascular, heart, and thymic, your thymus, malformations, not formed correctly. Many of the anomalies, the problems, are severe and cause death or massive handicap. These teratogenic, birth defect inducing effects are readily understood if one compares the structure of isotretinoin and retinoic acid and considers that retinoic acid is a major regulator of gene expression, or you might say a major screw-upper of gene expression. Here's another quote. Doses of vitamin A only slightly in excess of the RDA produce neurological toxicity in some cases. Vitamin A and related fatty acids have long been known to produce membrane injury at high dosage. But let's go back to that first sentence. Doses of vitamin A only slightly in excess of the RDA, what they suggest you get in a day, produce neurological toxicity in some cases. How much, here's one of my favorite sayings, how much poison does it take? People will ask, how much vitamin A does it take to cause toxicity? Here's the proper answer, the only proper answer. Just enough. How do you find out when you're there? You already got the problem. You don't know until you're there. And then when you're there, now we got to rewind and get you out of it. So for those of you who don't believe me, I mean, this is why I tell people, like, the quickest way for you to find out, those of you who don't believe me, double down. Double down your vitamin A intake. Double down your liver. Double down your carrots. Double down your spinach. You don't believe me? Hey, might as well prove me wrong. Prove me wrong. And then come find me when you break yourself. Okay? I fix kids of mothers who gave them cod liver oil and lots of dairy and lots of egg yolks and liver and all the disastrous stuff that a certain Dr. Price recommended. That we are eating, you folks out there in these foundation groups, you are eating so much more of these things than were ever available before. And you are poisoning yourself and you are poisoning your children. I'm sorry, it's true. And the lucky people have found me and we are fixing it. Here we go. Hypovitamin, this is still continuing from the same paper. Hypovitaminosis A. So they're saying vitamin A deficiency, which I have shown doesn't exist. Hypovitaminosis A, isotretinoin, Accutane, and excessive vitamin A all cause the syndrome of pseudotumor cerebri, which is basically too much pressure in your head. They also call it idiopathic intracranial hypertension, high blood pressure or high pressure in your head, causing headaches. Pseudotumor cerebri is where they're actually saying it's acting like you've got a tumor in your skull. Pseudo, you don't have a tumor, but it's like you have a tumor inside your cerebrum. Okay, so they just say here vitamin A deficiency, Accutane, and excessive vitamin A all cause the syndrome of pseudotumor cerebri. Now, let me ask this question. We've been over this before in the live stream. How do they measure hypovitaminosis A, supposed vitamin A deficiency? They measure it in the blood. Have I not gone over multiple times how the research shows that the amount of vitamin A in your blood has nothing to do with the amount of vitamin A in your liver? Absolutely nothing. I mean, we do know that if your blood vitamin A is really, really high, yeah, you probably got a ton of vitamin A in your liver. But it has been well demonstrated that people can have low vitamin A in their blood and their liver is completely full of vitamin A, because what if the vitamin A wasn't coming out in the bile? And it's actually the bile leaking into the blood that's what causes your vitamin A to go up in the blood. So if your liver is, let's say, unable to make bile, or it's not getting rid of the vitamin A into the bile, what happens in the liver? Vitamin A builds up. What happens in the blood? You see low vitamin A. This situation is actually worse than the people who are able to put the vitamin A into the bile, and you may see it higher in the blood. Those are overtypes, as I talk about in the program. Undertypes tend to have low things in the blood, low vitamin A, low copper, low iron, low ferritin, and they tend to be underweight because things are just getting stuck in their liver. They're not moving. But they just said vitamin A deficiency and Accutane and too much vitamin A all cause the same thing. I'm telling you that there is no such thing as vitamin A deficiency. It's still vitamin A toxicity, and that's why all of these things match. And this is exactly what Grant Genereux said in his free ebooks over at ggeneroux.blog. If somebody could type out that website, Grant's website, in the chat, just so people can get Genereux spelled correctly, ggeneroux.blog. A lot of people really like to start there with his free ebooks. And then when you've decided you probably can't live forever on a ground beef and rice and beans diet, then you come to find me, because we figured out how to do it without eating the same damn thing every day for 10 years. There is also a good video on my channel of Grant and I talking about the timeline of vitamin A detox. I would highly suggest you watch that. Now, hey, maybe you've noticed that the kids today aren't all so bright. Could there be a reason for this? This is still from that same paper. The effects of hypervitaminosis A in rat pups differ in different organs and at different ages. Oh, weird. Did I just talk about how things are different in different people? They can have different symptoms, and right? But let me finish. But there is no doubt that brain cell number is reduced by vitamin A excess in the rat pup. There is no doubt that brain cell number is reduced by vitamin A excess in the rat pup. I can't tell you, my kids do go to a public school here. It's definitely one of the better ones. But when I look around at these other kids, many of you understand this. When I look around at these other kids, there's not much going on back behind their eyes. There's just not as much going on. And then they're just staring at their screen. So people would try to blame their screens. It's nature and nurture. They want to poison them, and then they give them something to poison their brain from the outside. So we have nature would be like the toxicity within them. Nurture would be we shove screens in their faces. It's all planned out. The whole alphabet crowd. I've shown research about how this can affect internal organs and malformations in the ovaries and the testes, and then they do the nurture, and they have the societal push for all of this. It is all connected. This is their plan. They poison us in a certain way, so we have the chemical basis of it, and then they have society and media push certain ideas. So they push that, they like tip over the domino. It all makes sense when you look at it in that way. It's not one thing or the other. So we got that. We were in, I think we already did this one. Oh, so we're going to go into just real quick, the neurotoxicity, the neurotoxic effects of vitamin A and retinoids. Here's the quote: disturbances related to nervous functions also appear on the list of side effects resulting from excessive vitamin A intake, as for instance, confusion, brain fog, irritability, anxiety, depression, and suicidal ideation, thinking about suicide. However, such central effects are more commonly observed after chronic vitamin A exposition. They mean chronic vitamin A exposure. Wait, these brain and central nervous system effects are more commonly observed after taking vitamin A for a long time or eating vitamin A for a long time. On the other hand, acute, as in short-term, behavioral impairment was reported in individuals that experienced high vitamin A concentrations due to consumption of bare liver. Such altered behavior was called polar hysteria and was compared to schizophrenia. Additionally, acute vitamin A intoxication may lead to blurred vision. Got blurred vision? And decreased muscular coordination. And what do we see in people who do the vitamin A detox long enough? Wow, their lifting and their stuff in the gym sure starts to go up, and after they get past the early stages of the detox, they start getting stronger, they start recovering from their workouts better, their lifts go up, and they generally have more fun in the gym because they don't get as sore later. But if you're in the middle of the detox right now, don't go and expect that, because you probably got a long way to go. This is a marathon, not a sprint. So, oh wait, I didn't put this link in there. Let me put this link in there. Just a quick note. Surfing USA says, I beat my depression by exercising and quitting alcohol. Exercise helps lower calcium in the system. Exercise can increase your bile production and help get rid of it. But if you're really sick, exercise will dump that bile into your blood. So that's where it can help or hurt. And quitting alcohol, well, gosh, alcohol goes through the very same detox pathway as vitamin A, ADH, alcohol dehydrogenase, and ALDH, aldehyde dehydrogenase. So one of the other things that alcohol has shown in studies is alcohol kicks vitamin A out of the liver into the bloodstream. Weird. Vitamin A causes depression, and alcohol kicks vitamin A out of the liver into the bloodstream, and that would then go affect the brain. Do you see how it's all connected? Retinol is an alcohol. Ethanol is an alcohol. It's all absolutely connected. So you can do these things. Like alcohol is a straight poison. Don't ever fool yourself. If you choose to drink alcohol, that's one thing. Just admit to yourself that it is not good for you in any way, and there is no study that the alcohol industry can pay the scientists to make that is going to make alcohol healthy for you at any dose. Carbohydrates you eat, some of them are turned into alcohol in your system. This is why you need to have a good functioning detox system. And this is why when we overload our detox system with alcohols like ethanol and retinol, this is the thing that the alternative, especially, community needs to understand. The more toxic somebody is, the slower their detox pathways are. This has actually been shown. Pesticides go through the detox pathway. Pesticides damage the detox pathway. Malandialdehyde, which is when people talk about PUFAs being bad, what do PUFAs break down into? Malandialdehyde, a fatty acid ester that's an aldehyde. Does that go through aldehyde dehydrogenase? Yes, but I have research showing that malandialdehyde basically kills, or as they say, irreversibly inhibits aldehyde dehydrogenase. So malandialdehyde is such a terrible, terrible aldehyde that it shuts down the very enzyme that's supposed to break it down. How scary is that? This is why PUFAs are so bad. That's exactly why. It shuts down your aldehyde. So then PUFAs can cause you to have other toxicity because you're not processing the aldehydes because that aldehyde got shut down. I mean, the aldehyde dehydrogenase got shut down. So you see how PUFAs could technically lead to easier vitamin A toxicity. Because not only would PUFAs bind to retinol in your blood and carotenoids that break down into retinol and store them in your liver, but then when they come out and they start turning into aldehydes, your malandialdehyde from the PUFAs has shut down your ALDH. You don't break them down. Okay. So let's go to another paper. Polar hysteria, an expression of hypervitaminosis A, which they just mentioned, right? Seed oils. PUFAs, think of polyunsaturated fatty acids, seed oils. Isolated fats, isolated oils are not very good for you. Just think of it that way. Okay. Here's the quote from this paper. Isotretinoin, Accutane, is a drug closely related to the chemical structure of vitamin A. Well, it's the same compound. We've already been over that. When they analyze the blood for 13-cis-retinoic acid, you can take Accutane and raise that in the blood, or you can take more vitamin A and raise 13-cis-retinoic acid in the blood. It's the same compound. The pharmacology and toxicology of these two retinoids is similar enough to warrant comparison. No shit, Sherlock. Accutane is a powerful drug, which its manufacturer Roche indicates is limited for severe recalcitrant nodular acne. This potency is also reflected in Accutane's well-known ability to produce severe birth defects if taken during pregnancy. Less well-known is the risk of this lipid-soluble chemical. Well, actually, retinoic acids are water-soluble. This lipid-soluble chemical to affect the central nervous system. Reports of intracranial hypertension, pseudotumor cerebri, same thing, depression, and suicidal ideation with Accutane use have prompted an examination of this serious and life-threatening potential. Though Roche has added a warning to its product label for signs of depression and suicidal ideation, this product is being overprescribed for all forms of acne, including mild cases and moderate acne that have not been treated with alternative medications, which have a lesser risk of depression and suicide. Well, we're going to use medications with a lower risk of depression and suicide. This is what MDs consider first do no harm, right? They're like, we're going to use a drug that it's less likely to cause you to want to kill yourself. Aren't we good guys, right? There is no contesting that this drug is effective at clearing up the most severe forms of acne, but the public must be informed of its proper, limited indication of use. Depression and suicide can follow in patients with no prior history of psychiatric symptoms or suicide attempts. Yeah, you had a child one day with acne, and then you don't have a child the next day. Doctors are willing to do this to you, all for acne. Acne is a zinc deficiency and excess bile in your blood. What, same problem? Wow, weird. Another paper, retinoic acid and affective disorders, as in like mental emotional disorders. The evidence for an association, I'm just going to read the conclusion. The relationship between isotretinoin, 13 cis retinoic acid, and depression may have implications for a greater understanding of the neurobiology of affective disorders. Yeah, it's called Don't Poison Your Brain. Greater understanding. They won't admit it's a poison. They just won't. We're going to learn more about the brain because this poison causes people to get depressed and want to commit suicide. And that's going to teach us more about the brain. Why don't they just go, Doc, it hurts when I do this? Well, don't do that. Another paper. Interrelationships between isotretinoin treatment and psychiatric disorders, depression, bipolar disorder, anxiety, psychosis, and suicide risks. Boy, gosh, one compound that your body makes from all your body makes some of this from all the vitamin A that you eat. There is strong evidence. So when researchers use a word like this, that's strong wording. There is strong evidence from the psychiatric literature that demonstrates an association of isotretinoin to depression, probable clinical exacerbation of bipolar mood disorder, and possible links to psychosis. It's a vitamin. It's totally a vitamin. Active vitamin A. Okay, so now that we've done that, I'm going to hit on copper really quickly. Copper's a neurological toxin. It's super toxic. Your nerves hate it. If you have a chocolate addiction, you have a copper problem. You're addicted to copper, just like people get addicted to cigarettes. It's not because they're good for them. I'm just going to throw this out there. Why do all muscle meat carnivore people often see a lot of their issues go away? I'm not advising all muscle meat carnivore. I think it's too limited a diet. I think there's better options. But an all muscle meat carnivore diet is extremely low in vitamin A and copper. Put it together. There's a reason. There's still some vitamin A and copper in all muscle meat, tiny bits. Still low. You can't escape it. Anybody who's like obsessing at making these things zero, you're going to have a really tough time, and then you're probably going to find that you can't eat anything. So let's get into it. Sometimes they'll just give it to us in the title. Here's the title: Decreased zinc and increased copper in individuals with anxiety. Well, anxiety and depression are kind of hand in hand. And that's just the title of it. Do I need to go further? Discussion. These results suggest an association between zinc plasma levels and individuals with anxiety, demonstrating that zinc therapy is effective in increasing zinc plasma levels, and show that zinc supplementation may play a role in improved symptoms. Weird, in the discussion, they don't mention the copper being high. But here in the results, they say in this preliminary study, individuals with anxiety had significantly higher plasma levels of copper to zinc ratio, and lower zinc compared to controls. Huh. Why didn't they mention that in the discussion? Are they trying to hide something from you? Weird. Here, let's go to another one. Levels of copper and zinc in depression. Put that link there. Let's see. So what did they do? They did... This study was undertaken to estimate plasma copper and zinc in 35 depressed patients. 2 blood samples were drawn from each patient, one before treatment and the second after recovery from depression. The results were compared with 35 normal, healthy individuals. Here we go. The mean plasma copper in controls, depressed patients, and in patients after recovery. So let's say control people, copper was 106.82. Depressed patients, copper was 122.14. Patients after recovery was 104.22. People without depression, 106. People with depression, 122. And people who have recovered from depression, 104. Then there'll be the people out there, correlation is not causation. Like, do you need it to be any different than this? Right? Continuing, the copper level in patients when depressed were significantly higher as compared to controls and after recovery from depression. Continuing, the mean plasma zinc level in controls, depressed patients, and after recovery were, here we go. Plasma zinc, control people, 115.8. Depressed people, 107.62. And after recovery, 125.68. Controls, 115. Depressed, 107. After recovery, 125. And then they're going to say no significant difference could be obtained between control and depressed patients. Right. I mean, you can just look at the numbers and be like, yeah, it's pretty obvious. I love when they do that. This is where people will take quotes out here. They'll be like, but the author said there's no significant. And you're like, just look at the damn numbers. They will do their best not to say vitamin A or copper are bad. They'll do their best. Let's go to another paper. Elevated serum copper levels in women with a history of postpartum depression. Let's find the copper levels were significantly higher in women having a history of postpartum depression compared both to non-depressed women and to depressed women without a history of postpartum depression. The mean serum copper level of 78 women with a history of postpartum depression was 131, compared with 111 in 148 women without such a history, and 106 in non-depressed controls. Copper to zinc ratios were significantly higher in the postpartum depression history positive group due to the significant differences in copper levels. Okay. Next paper. Is serum copper a trait marker of unipolar depression, a preliminary clinical study? Here we go. Let's see. In the present study, we investigated alterations in serum copper concentrations in depressive patients before, during, and after antidepressant treatment and compared these values with the concentrations in healthy volunteers. The serum copper concentration in depression is significantly higher by 21% than in the controls. Okay. I think we've made this fairly clear. Toxic bile leaking into your blood causes your chronic symptoms. Your body gets rid of toxic vitamin A and toxic copper via the bile. So when you leak the bile into your blood, that is how copper and vitamin A get into your blood in the first place. That goes to your brain and it negatively affects your brain. And as you can see, the more vitamin A toxicity you have and the more copper toxicity you have, the higher copper, it's not that depressed people have higher copper levels, it's that the copper level is causing the depression. The more you have of these things, the more problems you're going to have. I see an absolute correlation between vitamin A toxicity and copper toxicity. Like they come together most times. Well, almost all the time. I deal with both of them in everybody. If you want to see how they go together, on this channel, go find my video on birth control pills. You'll get to see me in the days, in the earlier days of my vitamin A detox when I didn't look like I do now. But you'll also get to see all of my research showing that birth control pills, what do birth control pills do? They induce infertility. Okay. What happens in the blood of women who take birth control? The vitamin A goes up in their blood. The copper goes up in their blood. What? Wait, so you're telling me a pill that induces infertility raises vitamin A in the blood and it raises copper in the blood. Should we then assume that infertility can be caused by excess vitamin A and excess copper in the blood? Since the birth control pill is not made of vitamin A or copper, where is the vitamin A or copper coming from in the blood? Well, I told you it first gets there through bile leaking into the blood. Are birth control pills known to cause liver injury, aka cholestasis, aka toxic bile leaking into your blood? Yes. What does bile contain? Copper and vitamin A. So could we then assume that birth control pills are causing more toxic bile leakage into the bloodstream? And that's exactly how they raise vitamin A and copper in your bloodstream and cause infertility. Because all that blood goes to the female reproductive organs, doesn't it? It does. Now, there are also papers out today where they are theorizing that if they affect vitamin A metabolism, they can cause infertility in men. They can create a birth control pill for men. And knowing what I know, I immediately went, they're messing with ALDH. And I look, and they do mess with ALDH. So what they are doing is they are stopping, they're trying to say that you need retinoic acid to make sperm. And that if you stop ALDH and you stop making retinoic acid, you stop making sperm. But they ignore a critical part of the whole vitamin A metabolism thing. So ALDH is the enzyme that converts retinaldehyde into retinoic acid. Okay? So they're saying they're going to block this enzyme. So they're not going to make retinoic acid, and they're going to say, oh, look, you can't make sperm without retinoic acid. But what does that mean? What is building up on the other side? Retinaldehyde and all your other aldehydes. All the other aldehydes, because you're slowing down general ALDH. And you start building up aldehydes in your system. Here, wait, let me go do a quick search. Let me go see aldehyde infertility. Let me see if we've got anything on this. Oh, well, this would be kind of important too. This is not exactly what I was looking for, but motherly aldehyde elimination during pregnancy preserves the fetal genome. Maternal aldehyde elimination during pregnancy preserves the fetal genome. You want to have a kid without birth defects? Hey, you better clear those aldehydes. Gosh, how would that connect to fertility? It's not men, it's women, but it's showing that aldehydes screw up pregnancy. They screw up the baby. Let's see if we can find anything else. Actually, let me do a better thing. Let's do, sorry, I did the wrong search. Sometimes even I mess. Let's just do aldehyde sperm. Here's a paper, Oxidative Stress and Human Spermatozoa. Let me find the link for you guys. There it is. I didn't finish the title. And human spermatozoa, diagnostic and functional significance of aldehydes generated as a result of lipid peroxidation. What would that aldehyde be, class? That would be malondialdehyde. Okay. Which slows down your ALDH. It actually kills ALDH. Let's see. In this study, we have examined the impact of a range of small molecular mass aldehydes generated as a consequence of lipid peroxidation on human sperm function, and also compared the two most commonly formed compounds, 4-hydroxynonenal, whenever you see AL at the end, 4-hydroxynonenaldehyde, they try to hide it from you, and malondialdehyde for their relative ability to reflect a state of oxidative stress in these cells. Let me find it. Our results demonstrate that acrolein and 4-hydroxynonenaldehyde were the most reactive lipid aldehydes, inhibiting sperm motility. while augmenting or increasing reactive oxygen species production, lipid peroxidation, oxidative DNA damage. What do you not want your sperm to have? Oxidative DNA damage, and caspase activation in a dose-dependent manner. Gosh, weird that they're trying to inhibit ALDH, and they say that it's causing infertility by you need retinoic acid to make sperm, when all reality, they're just causing you to make more aldehydes, which damage the sperm. So, yeah. Wait, whoa. Oh, here we go. Let me just do this one. I'm just going to read part of the title of this one. Sperm motility is lost in vitro as a consequence of mitochondrial free radical production and the generation of electrophilic aldehydes. If your sperm don't move, they don't do their job. So it all starts to make sense. When you start to understand toxic bile theory and aldehyde dehydrogenase and what aldehydes do and where the aldehydes come from and why they're feeding us all of this stuff that causes us to get sick, become infertile, and die early. It's overwhelming. Don't get me wrong. This is overwhelming to new people that we have been so misled by everyone, whether they didn't know it and they just were parroting. That's what everybody on the internet's doing. Like when they say vitamin A is good for the eyes, people will just copy and paste that crap. Nobody's thinking for themselves, and they definitely don't look at the study where I found the more carrots that women ate, the worse their night vision was. Oh, maybe vitamin A is not good for the eyes. And then when you learn that the whole World War II propaganda where they were trying to fool German pilots and they were saying that carrots are good for your night vision, and people still believe it even though it was made up propaganda, unless it was all planned. And now you have everybody thinking that carrots are good for their eyes, even though the studies have come out showing that the more carrots that women ate, the worse their night vision. This is how slow medicine moves. Or do they really want to move forward? Or are they not encouraged from moving forward? I'm here trying to move medicine forward. So we're at 9:40 my time. Hope you all enjoyed that. I don't think I'm going to let me just see if anybody threw in a super chat, because I was not even watching for that. I was just on a rant. But somebody's got to do it, right? Okay. I think that's all we're going to do. I'm not going to get to any questions today. I'm sorry, folks. That was a lot. So hope you all enjoyed that. Hope you all are seeing. Oh, wait, there's one. Oh, Ramon, I recognize the color. There it is. The green color of your super chat. Okay, this is it. Ramon threw that in real quick. He's like, boy, I better get this in. Thank you very much, Ramon. Okay. Ramon asks, is there a bile toxicity connection between the gallbladder and the thyroid? My mom had her gallbladder removed and now has to have a thyroid nodule removed. Well, yes. You're probably not going to, let's just go here. Let me just go see if there's gallbladder, thyroid. Please don't submit any more super chats, folks. I got to get to my inner circle group. Let's just see if there's any connection between gallbladder function. I'll get into the bile and the gallbladder. And I did gallbladder last week. So for those of you who want to go over gallbladder stuff, that's last week. But right now, what we're just looking for is a quick connection between gallbladder and the bile, basically, and thyroid. Okay. Here we have gallbladder motor function in patients with different thyroid hormone status. I haven't read this one, but so the thing I want you to remember, what they're going to say is that your thyroid affects your gallbladder and your bile production. Okay. But really, more likely, it's that if you leak bile into your blood, it's going to affect your thyroid. Well, let's do that first. Let's do hyperthyroid, hypothyroid. I know how to find this study. Euthyroid, bile, PubMed. So let's go into this. First, I want to show you that the bile recipe is different in different thyroid states. And that they actually, when they took thyroid hormone, it changed the bile recipe. Okay. So here's the paper: serum bile acid profile, the recipe, in thyroid dysfunction and effective medical treatment. There's that link. Serum bile acid profile in thyroid dysfunction and effective medical treatment. Okay. Let me find where to start. Okay. Number 2. The sum of the concentrations of the individual bile acids was not significantly different among the 4 groups. So what they're saying is the total amount of bile acids in the blood, the total amount was not different. You remember how I said it could be more bile acid, or it could be a change in the recipe of the bile. Okay, so here we go. However, the composition, the recipe of the individual bile acids was not. Wait. I'm sorry. However, the composition of bile acid reflected the thyroid function. The recipe of the bile reflected the thyroid function. The most prominent bile acid was deoxycholic acid in the hypothyroid patients and chenodeoxycholic acid in the hyperthyroid patients. The serum bile acid profile of medically treated patients, those given thyroid hormone, was similar to that of normal controls. So they're saying the hypothyroid people had a specific bile recipe. The hyperthyroid people had a specific bile recipe. The control people, I want you to had a specific bile recipe. And then when they gave hypothyroid people thyroid hormone, that changed the bile recipe. But still, what did they just say? The sum of the concentrations of the individual bile acids was not significantly different among the 4 groups. So they're saying they all had bile in their blood. Just because they're controls doesn't mean they're that healthy. It just means they don't have the thyroid problems they're looking for necessarily. Okay? And here's just another idea of the recipe. The ratio of the sum of deoxycholic and cholic acid to that of lithocholic and chenodeoxycholic acid was found to be a good indicator of thyroid function, while the ratio of cholic acid to chenodeoxycholic acid correlated poorly with it. So they're talking about the recipe there. The recipe of the bile is something that you can change. This is where, like, some people, let's say they take glycine, which is one thing that can conjugate bile acids. It can bind to bile acids. If it does it and it changes the recipe in a good way, you feel better. If it doesn't and it changes the recipe in a bad way, you feel worse. Same thing with taurine. Taurine binds to your bile acids. Some people, it's binding and making your recipe better and you feel better. And some people, it's binding and it's making it worse. Okay? So, is it more likely that if you have a hypothyroid person and you take thyroid hormone and it changes the bile recipe, what is it that's affecting the thyroid? It's the bile. The thyroid hormone not being made was a symptom. The cause was the bile. The bile getting into your blood and negatively affecting the thyroid. And they're saying that there's different bile acid recipes in different thyroid conditions, and that you can modulate the bile recipe by taking things from outside. Okay? So we've got that. So now that you understand which is causing which, Now we look at the paper, gallbladder motor function in patients with different thyroid status. Oh, wow. Somebody threw in a $20 super chat. I'll look at that in a second. Okay, let's see. Okay, well, here's what this doesn't help us. No significant differences were noted for fasting, post-stimulus gallbladder volumes, and gallbladder ejection fraction between euthyroid, which means basically normal thyroid levels, hypothyroid, and hyperthyroid subjects. Or subjects, yes. Let me see if there's anything else. But basically, if someone, so I don't see anything easy, and we need to get this wrapped up. But is there a connection between gallbladder and thyroid? Well, if somebody has gallbladder problems to begin with, remember if we go back to the gallbladder show last time, and we talk about how the gallbladder can be wrecked by bile, like we just went over, causes coma and paralysis. So your gallbladder can stop functioning because it's constantly marinating in toxic bile, right? We have toxic bile causing the gallbladder problems and the thyroid problems. If you have gallbladder problems, you're probably already leaking bile significantly into the blood. And the bile is so toxic that it's negatively affecting the gallbladder, like it's shutting down the gallbladder. And when we look at the 5 F's of gallbladder problems, we see fat, female, 40 plus, fertile, and then they were saying a familial history of I think I got one of those wrong. But anyway, fat, female, 40, and fertile is the old one, and then they added a fifth one, 40 plus. And now they're trying to change the 40 plus into familial, so like genetic in the family. But anyway, we've been over how obesity is related to excess bile in the blood and excess vitamin A in the blood and excess copper in the blood. So we can link all these things together. Women just store toxic stuff faster than men. Ladies, it's the estrogen and your liver. Estrogen is really hard for your liver to process to begin with. So then you guys get exposed to toxins. You guys are putting on tons of cosmetics and doing all the scents. And, then those of you who are cleaning the house with like toxic things, there can be huge opportunities for women to just completely poison themselves. And if you think about it, I want you to think about this. The only people, if there was a plan to cause infertility, the only people they really have to get is the women. They don't really have to get the men, right? Because if the men are totally functional and everything's going great, if they make the women infertile, it's done. It's over. Game over. So why do you think, ladies, they try to sell you on all this toxic stuff and all this health foody garbage? Eat the rainbow. And they're trying to push vegan and vegetarian diets and eating bugs. And I mean, it's bad for men. Don't get me wrong, guys. This is terrible for men. But they really direct the toxic stuff at women. But now, guys, we have our Axe body sprays and all of our products now. Cosmetics are poison. Generally, the cosmetic industry is just poison. I can tell you, even you ladies who use mineral makeup, I can tell on a hair test, it's going in your blood. I see bismuth off the charts on hair tests, and that's from mineral makeup being absorbed into your body. And then we see antiperspirants. I see aluminum and zirconium off the charts in people who use antiperspirants because you absorb that into your bloodstream. If you put it on your skin, it's basically the same as eating it. And they just showed this with sunscreens too. They tested for 6 chemicals that are put in sunscreens, and they found after 24 hours, all 6 of the chemicals were in the bloodstream. So if you are using products on your skin that you would not eat because you're like, oh, those are toxic, I don't want to eat them, but I'll put them on my skin. No, they're getting into your blood. You are poisoning yourself. And they are happy for you to do it. Happy for you to do it. Better living through chemistry, right? And I'm just the little guy out here in the wilderness with my little YouTube live stream, trying to help everybody realize how not to get poisoned and how to undo the poisoning. Anyway, but Ramon, that's basically the connection. So once they take out the gallbladder, you want to go back to last week's episode and watch that one where I talk about what happens when they take out the gallbladder and adjustments that people have to make to it. Because when you don't have a gallbladder, you just have like a trickle of bile coming out all day. So it's a very different situation than if you have a gallbladder that works, where you can squeeze out big volumes of bile into the food you eat all at once. So digestion is, gallbladder's a factory standard part. You're supposed to have it. So when you don't have it, things do change. Okay. Let me find these other super. Oh, Rustica, thank you for the sticker. I really appreciate that. And Gabe is Brave 16. Okay, Gabe says, just donating the cause, Dr. Smith, no question. I'll see you on the inner circle. Yes, thank you, Gabe. Thank you, Ramon. Thank you, Gabe, and Rustica. Thank you for those stickers and super chats and all that stuff. I really do appreciate it. And yeah, we're gonna keep doing this because people like it, and we keep getting more and more. Used to be we'd gain about 110 subscribers in a month, and now we're gaining 240. So it's building. The Nutrition Truth Army. That's what you guys are. You are the Nutrition Truth Army, and the Nutrition Truth Army is growing, which is awesome. So that's all I have for today. The big thing that you can do, the takeaway you can do from this is, first of all, reduce your vitamin A consumption from foods. Next, you can find, if you're eating certain groups of foods that you're going to do anyway, if you're going to eat, generally copper comes from plant foods, or eating liver, which is not something I recommend. Gosh, the liver builds up copper and vitamin A. Weird. And iron and all these things that they are starting to find they're not so good for us. Why does the liver build them up? To save your life. That's why it builds them up. It's not trying to help you out later. It's not a savings account of nutrients. It's to keep you from dying. We do need iron, but only a little bit. And the rest of it, the liver holds for you so you don't die. Sometimes it stops being able to hold it so well. That's when your ferritin goes up. How do we get rid of ferritin? In the bile. So how does ferritin get into the blood? Leaky bile. Same thing. It's all the same thing. Chronic disease is toxic bile. So anyway, reduce your vitamin A content. There's a couple things you can do if you're going to be eating, let's say, grains or beans. You could do some research and find out which of those has less copper and try to align your choices with that. So you can just pick different foods that have less copper in them, because you're not getting away with a zero copper diet on anything you do. You're not getting away with a zero vitamin A diet. Even Grant's diet, even though people will say it's a zero vitamin A diet, it's not a zero vitamin A diet. And I could show this in about 5 minutes of research. Zero is a huge claim, right? Absolutes require absolute proof. I can very easily show that there's vitamin A and copper in red meat. That's easy. And beans have copper, and beans also have carotenoids. So this is just don't get into that argument. Brown rice has carotenoids in it too. But I'm going to throw this out there for you guys. If you guys want to come back to the live stream if you want, or come and on my other social media and tell me this. You guys, some of you are going to do this, and it's going to blow your mind. If you know you have copper water pipes in your house, and they go in and out of your water heater, that's where you go look. Go look at your water heater. If you see copper colored, the bronzish kind of color water pipes going in and out of the top of your water heater, you have copper water pipes. Enough of them. We have had quite a few people who are reporting within about 2 weeks that they feel significantly better, like less depressed, less anxious, better energy, better thinking. They don't use the shower water or the bath water. Like it's like you don't take a shower or a bath. What you do is you do kind of the sponge bath, the towel bath. with clean water, like reverse osmosis water or some other water that has been very well filtered. You use clean water. You do a minimal you're just out. You can stand in the bathtub. You can stand in the shower. Do it in there so you can get wet in there. And clean yourself that way so you don't expose yourself to the copper in that water. And we have had people who were kind of like, I didn't believe you, but then I did it, and I feel so much better in a couple weeks. How scary is that? Like when I tell you that topical or transdermal magnesium is 10 times more effective at raising your magnesium levels than pills, does the same also ring true for copper in your shower or bath water? Sounds like it. Seems like it. And your body's just absorbing it from that. Hot water opens your pores. And then the copper's right there to go in, along with all the other BS that's in tap water these days. Antidepressants and birth control pills and stuff that they can't filter out, or they don't filter out at the water treatment plants. Why can we filter it out at our house with a reverse osmosis filter, but a water treatment plant for a city can't filter these things out? Is it that they're leaving them in there? I don't know. Possibly. Or are they just lazy? Or do they not think our health is worth getting pharmaceuticals out of the water? Because they talk about putting pharmaceuticals into your water. So why would they worry about taking them out? Let's just medicate everybody. Anyway, try that shower thing. If you really feel like you have copper toxicity, big copper toxicity symptoms are fatigue, anxiety, depression, irritability, tingling just about anywhere, easy anger issues, that stuff. Try it. I would bet if you do have significant, and try to reduce the copper in your diet where you can, and see how you feel in 2 weeks. And if you feel different now, if you're not going to stop showering or taking a bath, I didn't say to stop washing yourself. Before some idiot goes out on the internet and says, Dr. Smith says don't bathe. No, that would be wrong. I do think people are taking way more showers and baths than they need to, and it's not good for your skin to wash off your skin's oils all the time. But who loves you taking showers? All the people making the shampoos and the conditioners and the soaps and the body washes and all that stuff, which are full of toxic garbage anyway, which you're absorbing through your skin, just like the copper in the water. Maybe people are feeling better because they're not putting all that bullshit on their skin. I don't know. Anyway, tips for bathing to avoid the poisons that are in the water. Run your water for at least 5 minutes before you get in it. Right? So run the shower 5 minutes before you get in it. Get all that copper soaked up water, that copper marinated water that was in the pipes and the water heater and all that stuff. Get it out. Move it. Move the water. Next, try to take your shower or your bath in as lower the temperature to the point where you can deal with it. You may not love it. I know you ladies tend to love super hot showers. Gosh, it's weird that ladies get copper toxicity more than men do. Coinky dinks are all over the place. Make your shower as low a temperature as you're willing. Lower is better. You will open up your pores less, and you will leach less copper off the sides of the pipes. Win-win. And then just try to make your shower or your bath as short as you need to, as short as you can. You're not in there to dawdle and get like a shower head massage and do all. No, just get in there and get out. If you're not going to stop showering or bathing to try the experiment, do these things in your shower so you're exposed to less toxins in your tap water. And no, a shower water filter, other than the Aqua Youth one, which I've put up here before, I'll put that up again. Put this up. The Aqua Youth shower filter does take out, according to testing, they say it takes out 33% of the copper in your water. Still got 67% to deal with. So those are some things you can do. And those of you who do this experiment, I do want to know about it, because I've had multiple people on Twitter and other places reporting back to me that they do feel better. One of my good friends did it here. He stopped showering at his house and he went to his sister's house who didn't have copper water pipes. And he said within a week, his anxiety was less, his energy was better, all sorts of things improved. He said the blue moons at the bottom of his toenails went away. Gosh, what color? What's blue? Oxidized copper rust, if you will. And all that went away from his toenails. So anyway, thank you all for coming. And I will see you next week. Don't forget my website, nutritiondetective.com. All of the other links are below. Check out the other live streams, especially 71. That's the basics of toxic bile theory. And if you want to watch the one on gallbladder, that was last week. That was 82. We've done 83 of these in a row every Friday. I'm going to tell you that pretty soon, either 1 week or 2 weeks, I'm going to do the live stream on a different day, because I'm going to be taking my lovely daughter to a dance convention in Vegas on a Friday, and I'm not going to be here to do this. So I'm going to have to do it on a different day. So just keep an eye out for that. Make sure you subscribe to the channel so you get the notifications. I'll put a notification here, and watch my social media where I'll announce that it's going to be on a different day. So, okay. You all have a great weekend. I will see you next time. Bye now.